Good morning. I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News Now, coming to you from our digital desk. We're going to be taking you live into the Cuyahoga County Court of Common Pleas. This is the sentencing for Mr. Luis Barajas. He is the 76-year-old former priest who has pleaded guilty of gross sexual imposition. He pleaded guilty back on February 14th. This dates back to October 10th of 2023. Barajas was called to a family's home to say a prayer for a 15-year-old little girl who had cancer. Apparently, according to the family members, during this prayer, he was using blankets and towels to hide what his hands were doing underneath, and that's when the inappropriate touching came in of the 15-year-old girl. This is not the first time that Mr. Barajas has had a problem with the law. Back in 1989, when he was with the diocese in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, he was accused of sexual misconduct involving juveniles. At that point, he was sent back to Columbia, but clearly has at some point made his way back to Northeast Ohio and has now faced similar charges. Again, the sentencing now for Luis Barajas.
Barajas faced a prison sentence of 6 to 18 months, that he would be classified as a Tier 1 sex offender under the SORN law, that he could possibly receive up to 5 years of community control, and that if he was sentenced to prison, he would be subject to a term of 5 years of post-release control following any term of incarceration. Mr. Rodriguez, are you prepared to go forward with sentencing today?
I am, Your Honor.
All right. And Mr. Sadiq, are you prepared to go forward with sentencing today?
We are, Your Honor.
Okay. And has Marcy's Law been complied with?
It has. We reached out to the victim. We let them know the day of the hearing. They indicated to us they wish to provide a written response. We did not get that written response. I inquired this morning. We made further efforts to contact the victim and have not received a response.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Sadiq. All right. Before we get to the comments regarding sentencing, Mr. Barajas, I do want to go over the requirements for you to register as a sex offender under the SORN law. Sir, before me I have a document. I will read over that document with you. Sir, you have been convicted of or pled guilty to a sexually oriented offense and or child victim offense as defined in Ohio Revised Code 2950.01, and you are one of the following. In this case, you are a Tier 1 sex offender, child victim offender registrant. You are required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish residency within 3 days of coming into that county, or if temporary domiciled for more than 3 days. You are also required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish a place of education immediately upon coming into that county. If you establish a place of education in another state, but maintain a residence or temporary domicile here, you are also required to register in person with the sheriff or other appropriate official in that other state immediately upon coming into that state. You are also required to register in person with the sheriff of the county in which you establish a place of employment. If you have been employed for more than 3 days or for an aggregate of 14 days in a calendar year. If you establish a place of employment in another state but maintain a residence or temporary domicile here. You are also required to register in person with the sheriff or other appropriate official in that other state. If you have been employed for more than 3 days or for an aggregate of 14 days in a calendar year. Employment includes volunteer services. You are also required to provide to the sheriff temporary lodging information, including address and length of stay, if your absence will be for more than 7 days. After the date of initial registration, you are required to periodically verify your residence address, place of employment, and/or place of employment in person at the county sheriff's office no earlier than 10 days prior to your verification date. If you change residence address, place of employment, and/or place of education, you shall provide written notice of that change to the sheriff with whom you most recently registered and to the sheriff in the county in which you intend to reside or establish a place of employment and/or place of education at least 20 days prior to any change and no later than 3 days after change of employment. If the residence address change is not to a fixed address, you shall include a detailed description of the place or places you intend to stay and no later than the end of the first business day, immediately following the day you obtain a fixed address. You must register with the sheriff that fixed address. You are further advised, in accordance with federal law, you must report any international travel to your registering authority no less than 21 days prior to travel. Failure to do so may subject you to criminal prosecution. You shall provide written notice within 3 days of any change in vehicle information, email addresses, internet identifiers, or telephone numbers registered to or used by you to the sheriff with whom you have most recently registered. You are required to comply with all of the above described requirements for a period of 15 years with in-person verification annually. This is a Tier 1 registration requirement. Since your expected residence address is in Cuyahoga County, you will be required to register at the sheriff's office located at 1215 West 3rd Street, Cleveland, Ohio, 44113. Failure to register, failure to verify residence at the specified times, or failure to provide notice of a change in residence address or other required information as described above, will result in criminal prosecution. Sir, I have what appears to be your signature acknowledging that you have been described these requirements and that you've gone over these requirements with your counsel. Sir, is this your signature on the bottom of the page with today's date?
Yes.
And did you go over the requirements to register with your counsel prior to today's hearing?
Yes.
All right, thank you, sir. I will also execute this form. I will have my bailiff make copies and provide a copy to you. All right, we'll move forward to any comments from counsel and the defendant regarding sentencing in this matter. Mr. Sadiq.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, this incident started about 2 to 3 months before the event itself, when the defendant became friendly with the family while speaking Spanish at a church. The family is a Spanish-speaking family. Their daughter was going through chemo and radiation treatment. On the night before the incident, or I apologize, the next day from the incident, she was set up for her 4th round of chemotherapy. The victim was on 17 different medications. Many of which made her drowsy. The defendant was invited over, and a driver brought him over to the home to pray for her. While there, he had oil, and he proceeded to sit on the couch He put his left arm around her and was rubbing her bare midriff stomach as she had a cut-off shirt. The defendant indicated that she was cold and asked for a blanket. At this point, her head is rested on his shoulder with his arm around her. The family indicates that he then lifted the blanket up to cover his arm and more of her body. It's at this point that his hand goes up beneath the shirt and the bra. While that was going on, the blanket fell, and the person who drove him over witnessed his hand up her shirt. The prayer continued, and they eventually left, but the driver was concerned and brought this to the attention of the priest, Father Thane. Your Honor, prior to this incident, back in 2016, there was a Diocesan news article from the Tablet that indicated the following. An individual known as Father Jesus Barajas, aka Luis Jesus Barajas Arias, has claimed to be a priest from a diocese in Colombia from the Diocese of Brooklyn and from the Trinitarian Order. Yet he never professed his final vows, and we have no proof of his ever being ordained. Several allegations of misconduct with minors has been filed against him. He's been residing in Jackson Heights for over 20 years and is often invited to homes within the Hispanic community to celebrate masses and sacraments within Queens, New Jersey, and Long Island areas, allowing him to gain access to minors. Please be advised that Father Barajas has no permission whatsoever to function in any way as a priest in the Diocese of Brooklyn. And in 2018, Your Honor, according to a site called bishopaccountability.org, he was named as an accused by the diocese on a list on 8/1/18. His personnel file shows that in 1989 there were concerns about his past allegations against him of child sexual abuse. The diocese gave Barajas money to return to Colombia in November of '89. Your Honor, this shows a pattern of behavior that the defendant has abused his position both within the community and within the church. He's used this unique position to have access to these children. And in fact, I believe Father Thaden relayed to the police there were other concerns as well that were brought to his attention. Though none of those raised to the level of a criminal offense. Given the totality of this information, the fact that he's gone so long and is now being held to account for his behavior, the state believes a prison term of 18 months is the most appropriate sanction possible. And we would implore the court to impose that time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sadiq. Mr. Rodriguez.
Thank you, Your Honor. First and foremost, I've spoken with Mr. Barajas many times throughout the pendency of this case. First and foremost, he would apologize for his actions and to the victim and the victim's family. If they were here in person, he would have taken that opportunity to address them face to face. Mr. Barajas is before this court, already accepted responsibility for his actions by pleading guilty to gross sexual imposition of felony of the fourth degree. With the hopes of bringing some closure to the victim and the victim's families, but not having to put them through the stresses of the trial. They can concentrate on the well-being of the young lady that was the victim in this matter, for her health and her treatment. Mr. Barajas is 77 years old, has no prior criminal convictions. The pattern of behavior that the prosecutor has made part of the record are allegations. Never has there been a conviction, or I believe a prosecution, but I'm not sure about that. Mr. Barajas is a man with various ailments, which requires him to take medication on a daily basis. This was an issue here in the county jail. He spent 3.5 months here in the county jail waiting trial. Lost 20 pounds. And the last time we were here, when I saw him, he kind of was frail. Since his release from county jail, he's abided by the court's orders. He was placed with a GPS monitor and placed on home detention. With no violations. Your Honor, to my understanding that based on the discussions I've had with the prosecution, that the family is not seeking prison in this matter. Under the old law, there would have been a presumption that Mr. Barajas would be placed on community control sanction. And we're asking that of this court, based on my client's genuine remorse, his lack of criminal history, his age and health. He has never been provided an opportunity to do community control sanctions. We believe if the court offers Mr. Barajas an opportunity to be supervised by the sex offenders unit, they would be able to monitor his whereabouts and provide some type of services, so the likelihood of this ever happening again is lessened. Other than that, Your Honor, I know Mr. Barajas would like to address the court.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Barajas, anything you'd like to say this time?
Sí. Yes. Quiero pedirle mi perdón y mis disculpas a Karen y a la familia.
I'd like to ask forgiveness from Carrie and from the family
Por mi si las defraudé, les ofendí o les...
If I disappointed them, if I offended them,
Ofendí o les lastimé o sí.
or if I hurt them,
Pido perdón a Dios
I ask forgiveness from God
por mis pecados,
for my sins,
mis errores
my mistakes,
y equivocaciones.
and my errors.
Y le pido al señor juez
And I'd like to ask Your Honor
irme para Colombia
if I could go to Colombia
para terminar mis últimos días
in order to live the remainder of my days there
y que en compañía de mi familia.
in the company of my family.
Y le agradezco a todos, muchas gracias a todos.
And I would like to thank everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Sí. Pido que Dios los bendiga
And may God bless you.
y que Dios bendiga a América.
And may God bless America.
All right, Mr. Braz, is that all you'd like to say at this juncture?
Sí, 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 sí.
Yes, yes, yes.
All right. Thank you, sir. You may be seated. All right, before imposing sentence, the court notes for the record it has considered the record, the oral statements made here today. The court must and has formulated its decision based upon, excuse me, the overriding principles and purposes of felony sentencing, namely to protect the public from future crime by the defendant or others, and to punish the offender using the minimum sanctions that the court determines accomplish those purposes without imposing an unnecessary burden on the state or local government resources. To achieve these purposes, the court has considered the need for incapacitation, deterrence, rehabilitation, and providing restitution. The court must and has also considered the seriousness and the recidivism factors relevant to the offense and offender pursuant to Revised Code 2929.12. The court must and has ensured that the sentence being imposed does not demean the seriousness of the crime and the impact it has on the victim, and is consistent with other similar offenses committed by like offenders. Finally, this sentence is not based upon any impermissible purposes, namely the race, ethnic background, gender, or religion of Mr. Braz. Sir, you pled guilty to a felony of the 4th degree. That felony of the 4th degree that you pled guilty to is gross sexual imposition. You admitted to sexually assaulting a child. In and of itself is a absolutely horrendous crime. But with the additional factors that this child was suffering severe health consequences at the time, was faced with a long road of treatment and recovery, and her family looked to you for support and guidance and help, and you took advantage of that, warrants a serious consequence. I will find that prison is consistent with the purposes of Revised Code 2929.11. You have taken advantage of your position and caused great harm to this victim. The range available to this court is anywhere from 6 to 18 months. You did admit to your conduct in this case, so I'll find that that mitigates somewhat of the sentence the court will impose. The court imposes a prison sentence at the Lorraine Correctional Institution of 15 months on count 1. Sir, you will get full credit for time served. Sir, upon your completion of your prison sentence, you will be subject to a term of post-release control by the Adult Parole Authority for 5 years. When this period of post-release control is imposed following your release from prison, if you violate conditions of that supervision, the parole board may impose a prison term as part of the sentence of up to 1/2 of your stated prison term. You may also be charged with a new offense called escape, another felony where you face additional prison time. If, while on post-release control, you are convicted of a new felony offense, in addition to being punished for the underlying conduct, an additional consecutive prison term of 1 year, or what time remains on your post-release control term, may be added as an additional consecutive penalty. Sir, while on post-release control, you may not ingest or be injected with a drug of abuse, and you must submit to random drug testing. As stated, you will get full credit for time served. By my calculations, you have 112 days of jail time credit. Finally, sir, I will find that you're indigent. I will waive all fines, fees, and costs. Anything further, Mr. Rodriguez?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Anything further, Mr. Sadiq?
We would ask for a no contact order with the victim and our family.
All right. Court will, once a prison sentence is issued, does not have power to implement a no contact order. Sir, you will be remanded to the custody of the county sheriff, and they will be ordered to transport you to prison. Good luck to you, sir. Court is adjourned.
Dan DeRose with 19 News. You're looking at 77-year-old Luis Barajas, who has just been sentenced to 15 months in prison. If you watch the entire sentencing, you heard the rather disturbing synopsis. He had met a family at church, claimed to be a priest. We heard from the state that a bulletin went out from the Brooklyn, New York diocese warning the Spanish-speaking population of the city of Brooklyn and the surrounding area that Mr. Barajas had never produced any kind of material saying that he was in fact a priest from Colombia. So there are questions of whether or not he was actually a priest. He meets a family in church here in the Cleveland area in Westlake. The daughter of that family, 15 years old, was going through chemo. She was a cancer patient. He was invited over to the home to help pray for her. I'm not going to get into the disgusting details, but using a blanket because she was cold, he was using oil, supposedly saying prayers. And that's when he sexually assaulted that girl who was on, and I wrote this down, 17 different medications, and that she was drowsy at the time this was happening. It was only because the blanket fell off the 15-year-old girl that he was caught perpetrating the sexual assault, touching her inappropriately. It was fortunately a member that had a man who had drove the alleged priest to the home, who reported that back to the priest at the Westlake church, and that's what initiated the investigation, the arrest, the guilty plea, and now the 15 months in prison. Whether you think that's appropriate or not, enough or not, keep in mind this was a felony of the 4th degree. He could have been sentenced anywhere from 6 months to 18 months is the maximum. You heard the judge say, since he took responsibility, pleaded guilty, didn't put the family and the 15-year-old through a trial, that got him really the 3 months off his sentencing. Barajas himself, in his own words, said he was asking for the court to send him back to Colombia so that he could live out the rest of his days with his family in Colombia and not go to prison here in the United States. That's not going to happen, given 15 months in the Lorraine Correctional Institute. He'll also, if he gets out, if and when he gets out, have to register as a Tier 1. That's the lowest level of sex offender. For 15 years, he'll have to register once a year with the county sheriff's department. We're going to wrap this up. We'll have complete coverage of this and all of the day's news when we start. Our 11 o'clock news is already underway on CW 43, and then our noon news coming up on Channel 19. Until then, I'm Dan DeRose with 19 News. Have a good afternoon.
19 News is everywhere. Download our CTV apps and follow us on social media.